Welcome, everybody. Today, we're going to be talking about how to handle pushback when you are starting to grow and expand yourself and change who you are. Now, this is something that most people don't see coming when they start down some sort of a development or a growth path. So I want to empower you with a resistance response plan. So just, picture this for me. You finally start making changes that feel right in your life. Don't know if you've been there. You're setting boundaries, you're speaking up for yourself, you're maybe realigning your life with what actually matters to you. And instead of the support that you were hoping for, what starts to show up for you is pushback, actually. I don't know, maybe I've seen this happen in so many different scenarios with different, parents and with entrepreneurs and employees. So maybe you're a dad who's trying to just reclaim your mornings so that you can be more present at home, and suddenly work gets weird, or your spouse doesn't know what to do with this new rhythm that you're doing. Or maybe as an entrepreneur, you're shifting your business to reflect your values, and maybe longtime clients or team members start looking at you like you've maybe lost your edge, or gosh, maybe you are an employee who's finally using their voice, and now you're getting maybe a side eye from people, or maybe that subtle like stay in your lane energy from people. Does any of that sound familiar to you? If so, let me just say this clearly, you are not doing anything wrong. That is simply resistance. It's not a problem. It's a sign that you're growing in ways that actually matter, and you need to keep moving forward beyond that. Now, I know this. My name is Jake Talbert. I'm the founder and author of this book. It's called The Giver Method. This is an Amazon bestseller, tons of 5-star reviews. It's been out since November, and it's already helping thousands of people to create more value in their lives, to discover their gifts and superpowers, live more fulfilled and joyful lives. And so part of that is that change that people go through, and people will meet these different types of resistance along the way. Now, they have to battle past that beyond the other things they have going on, head trash and fear and things like that. So I want to help you move past all that. So I recommend you go down to the description. You can get yourself a copy of the book. I'll have a link to it on Amazon. It's only $10. It's the best $10 that you could invest in yourself right now. And if you're not ready to do that, then I'll put a free resource down there called The Giver's Roadmap, where you can get a free resource to help walk you through those steps in the process as well. I'll put both those links down in the description. That way you can get to them later on. Now, today I want to walk you through, I call it the resistance response plan. Now, it's a real world framework, built on all sorts of principles, steps, ideas, strategies that you can do that helps you to stay grounded when people around you just don't quite know how to handle the growth that you're going through and how you're showing up differently. Because here's the truth, resistance isn't the enemy of your growth at all. It's just proof that you're shifting systems, you're moving and changing a little bit. And that kind of shift takes clarity, tools, and just enough self-trust to stay the course. And so by the end of this video, you're going to just have this clear plan, hopefully, not just how to handle that pushback, but how to continue to grow through it. We're talking really practical strategies that help you to keep momentum going, to protect your peace, and to show up in a way that honors both your direction and the relationships that you already have in your life. So if this is something that you're ready for, go ahead, if you're new here, just checking it out, if you watch previous videos and you haven't done it yet, hit the subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications. I don't want you to miss out on any of the videos or content that we release that's about helping you rediscover your gifts and superpowers and turning them into true impact that you can make in your life and living a more fulfilled life. Okay? You can also find us on TikTok, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, or at thegivermethod.com. I'll put all the links to those down in the description, so you can go check us out in all these other places as well. So let's dive in. Let's start rolling through these different steps and principles that you can do. So the first one is understanding the mechanisms behind resistance, because as we kick this thing off, there's this truth that can change everything for you. When someone pushes back against your growth, it's usually not about you. It's about how the change is shaking up their own personal comfort zone. Here's what I mean. When you start saying no, or speaking up, or showing up differently, you're disrupting the rhythm people have gotten used to in your life. If you were maybe a yes person always, you're the fixer or the one who always stays quiet, then growth forces others to adjust to this new perspective that you bring to the table. And let's be honest, most people aren't signing up to grow with you just because you've decided to grow. All right, so their resistance, that thing that's pushing against you, that's often just them trying to put things back the way they were, even if maybe the old way wasn't really working for you. This is It's about system disruption response is really what it comes down to. So when one part of your relationship shifts, whether that's in family or in the workspace or friendship, or maybe the whole system feels it, like you're not doing anything wrong. Once again, you're just moving in a way that makes that others question their own patterns that they're in. And that's uncomfortable. And their discomfort can look like, I don't know, sometimes it looks like criticism or doubt or maybe subtle guilt trips. So here's how to work with it instead of letting it shut you down and stopping your growth. So the first thing is to remind yourself, resistance doesn't mean you're on the wrong path. It means you're creating real change. So saying something like a mantra to yourself that's like, hey, it's just, their adjustment process. My growth is not a threat. I'm trying to invite them along with me. Just changing and finding the mantra you can have behind that is going to shift to keep you grounded when everything maybe starts to shrink around you. And then, of course, next you can look past the pushback to what might actually be going on. Ask yourself things like, are they scared of maybe losing access to me? Or are they feeling insecure about their own lack of change? Or are they missing a version, are they missing the version of you that, makes their life easier for them, or whatever it may be? Try to figure out what that is. That doesn't mean you're excusing bad behavior, but it means that you're not responding, you're not responding to the surface level issue. You're actually looking for what the real issue is. You're not looking at the surface level noise. You're trying to really discover what's there. And then finally, lead with empathy without abandoning your direction. You might say hey, I know this feels different and that might be a little uncomfortable, but these changes are really important to me. And I want to make space to talk about it and bring that up so that, you can be joined along in my journey. Whatever you do, find the way that keeps you steady without steamrolling them. And, build trust within it and show that, hey, this is a new path, but I want you to come down this path with me. And this matters because, if you don't get what, if you don't get what resistance actually is, you start thinking maybe there's a red flag. It's not this resistance, it's not you in any way. It's just that proof of growth. And so you need to start finding the ways to stop shrinking and create the safe space where you can stay grounded in who it is that you're actually becoming moving forward. And that's actually going to lead us into our second principle. Now, here's something that most people miss when they're stepping into this growth mode. Resistance from others is often very predictable. And when you can actually see it coming, you don't get knocked off course every time it shows up. Think of it like the weather forecast before you go on a big road trip. You can't stop the storm from rolling in while you're on that trip, but sure as heck, you're going to grab a jacket or an umbrella or maybe drive a completely different route. Well, the same thing applies here. Most people wait until they're deep in someone else's doubt or criticism before they try to figure out how they want to respond. And by then, your emotional you're off balanced and you're way more likely to shrink or second guess yourself. But when you create a resistance forecast, you shift out of that reactive mode. You don't get blindsided. You're ready for when it comes. And the truth is, resistance, it's always going to follow some different patterns. So your parents might throw tradition at you. That's not how we've done things in the past. Or, your coworkers might throw shade with a little bit of a smile. Oh, well, that's kind of risky, don't you think? Or maybe your friends stop dropping subtle lines at you well, gosh, you've changed. And you know what that really means is, gosh, none of these are random. If you've heard those things, if you felt those things, if you've heard others, or maybe you've caught yourself saying those, gosh, they are predictable, and predictable means manageable. So here's what you want to do. The first thing is write down what's actually changing in your life. What are the habits? What are the mindset shifts that you're doing? What are the ways that you're trying to show up differently and more intentionally? And then list out the people who are in your world who are likely to take notice of that. And next to each name, ask how have they reacted to change before? What version of me are they the most used to? What might feel maybe unfamiliar or threatening about who it is that I'm becoming? And once you spot those likely storm fronts blowing in, then create the response plan for each one. Not so that you can argue in any way, but, not to even, I wouldn't even say to defend, because that even, no, you just need to stand your ground when that pushback comes. Maybe your parent just needs a little reassurance of your values haven't changed in who you are. Your boss needs to hear, how this shift actually benefits the whole team. Or maybe your friends just need clear boundaries because, sarcasm, it's not helpful in any way. Whatever that thing may be for you, you need to prepare for it now. You're not like you don't want to be scrambling later when these types of things happen. Now the kicker is like make that sort of a rhythm, find your check-in. Maybe it's a weekly check-in or something, and check in with the forecast. Ask yourself, like, where did resistance show up for me this week? Was I ready for it? How did I handle it? And it's not about getting it perfect in any way. It's just about getting better, and over time start to spot that resistance patterns faster and responding calmer, and maybe staying truer to your path of who you are. Because when you expect resistance, but maybe you don't prepare for it all the way, it's going to catch you off guard every time. It's going to slow your momentum. But when you plan for it, and even a little bit, you just start to show up with strength instead of scrambling for approval. Now, as we then transition to the third principle that we have, like, let's talk about something that can totally derail your growth if you don't handle it like early. Not all feedback that you get deserves a front row seat of your mind. You need to understand the difference between feedback and discouragement. Seriously, like, some feedback can help you grow faster, stronger, and smarter, and some of it is just someone else's fear dressed up as a concern. And so one of the most valuable skills that you can start to develop when you're on a growth journey is learning to tell the difference between helpful guidance and a discouraging noise. Because if you can tell them apart, either you shut out everyone, even the voices that could help you. Like, if you don't, you're just going to shut down to the people who could be giving you such great advice. You start questioning yourself every time someone raises an eyebrow. Well, the difference is, like, guidance helps you. It's the refined, like, how, like, hey, have you thought about trying it this way? And discouragement approaches it from, like, the weather. Like, should you even be doing this? It's like, well, gosh, those are two totally different things. Guidance usually respects your direction and offers a perspective to make your journey a little smoother. Discouragement comes from subtle jabs or past failure reminders or tones that you're probably not cut out for this. The difference is like, in your gut, you'll feel it. It's just that in the moment, you need to be able to recognize it, especially when emotions are high. It can be really confusing and hard to distinguish the two. So here's how you can actually start to make this a little bit more real in your life. When someone asks you or when someone gives you any sort of an input, pause before you respond and ask yourself, like, are they helping improve the way that I'm growing? Or are they trying to get me to stop growing altogether? And if they're offering specific action-oriented, items, it's probably guidance. If it's vague, if it's negative, or, making it out, against your identity or past mistakes, like, gosh, it's probably just discouragement in disguise. So, like, here's the simple strategy, like, and it took me a while to figure this out and start to work it myself. Like, you got to create a feedback filter. Write down the values and goals that you're just not willing to negotiate, the stuff that's at your core of who you are and what you're trying to build. And then when feedback comes in, ask, like, does this challenge my approach or my core? Like, if it challenges how you do something but still supports your direction, it's probably worth listening to. If it's questioning the direction altogether or undermines your confidence, like, that's not your feedback to carry. You just let that go. And then another rule, of course, is you could always use the 24-hour rule. When you get feedback, maybe if it rattles you especially, give it a full day before you decide what you're going to do with it. Don't react in the moment. Like, sleep on it. And then ask yourself, like, does this help me grow, or does it just, make me want to shrink? Clarity almost always shows up in that little space between. And if you really want to make this work long term, then you'll build yourself a growth circle. Find that small group of people who, you've proven, that they care about your development and your direction. Like, these are the folks whose feedback you maybe weigh more heavily than others because they've earned your trust. It doesn't mean that you ignore what other people are saying, but just, you stop treating every opinion like it's gospel to you. Now, gosh, this is going to be so important, because if you don't learn to filter that feedback, you're either going to block out the good stuff that could really help you grow, or internalize the stuff that makes you want to stop altogether. And the goal isn't to tune everyone out. It's just to tune out the voices that don't align with where you're headed right now. And so that's going to lead us into the fourth one, which is about deploying this empathetic bridge. One of the toughest parts about growing, not everyone is going to appreciate it. They're not going to love the new version of you. And when people push back, your default response is usually to do one of a couple things. Like, either you get defensive and you dig in, or you shrink back or abandon the change just so you can keep the peace. But there's another way. It's not about giving in or giving up. Like, it's about building this idea of this empathetic bridge, which is a practice of making, room for people's fears without making their fear your problem. It lets you stay committed to your growth and stay connected to the people who matter, even when, maybe they don't totally understand what you're doing or why it is that you've chosen to do this. When someone resists your growth, they're usually just something underneath it. And they're not mad like that you're setting boundaries or changing the routine. They're just maybe a little scared of what that means for them. Will they still be included as a part of that? Are they going to lose you? Are you outgrowing them? And most of the time, people aren't trying to sabotage you. They're just trying to feel safe again in the relationship that feels like maybe it's shifting under their feet. And so what you can do to put this kind of in play of this emotional, empathetic bridge is before you have a conversation with someone who's maybe pushing back, pause for a second and just start to think to yourself, like, if I were them, what might I feel, hard or have a difficult time with about this change? What could be afraid of, that losing or changing more than I would want it to? Like, it's not about excusing a behavior or something they've said. It's just about understanding what might be behind what it is, so that you don't walk into a conversation that feels like you're walking in ready for war. When you do talk, like, practice that the validation without agreement, which basically means like, hey, I get why this might feel hard, or like it makes sense that this feels different for you. You're not saying that they're wrong, like you're not apologizing for your growth. You're just showing them like, hey, you're not, I'm not trying to grow different or away from them. Like I'm growing with some intention, and I want you to be a part of that. And then the next move is like, you can call out the fear that they're having as gently as possible. So you got to approach this with a lot of caution, but like, say something like, I wonder if you're worried that this means we won't be, like maybe I won't be around as much, we won't be together as much. You're feeling like this change might shift how we work together. Like, you're giving them language for something that they may not know how to say out loud. And that alone can change the total tone of the conversation that you're having. The last thing is something that you to hold on to, like, just reassure them that, that what's staying the same. Maybe it's your values, maybe it's your loyalty, maybe it's the commitment to the relationship. You're not promising nothing's going to change, because that's not real. You are trying to change and trying to improve yourself and grow, but you're showing them at the core of who you are isn't disappearing. You're just making space for more of you to start showing up more intentionally and better. Now, as you take that, you can now transition that into our fifth one, which is this practicing your internal validation and how you develop that. The truth is, like, if you're always waiting for someone else to sign off on your growth, you're probably not going to ever get that, and you're not going to ever feel ready to do that. The moment someone doubts you, and trust me, they will, it happens all the time, like, momentum disappears, not because you were wrong in trying to grow or change, but because you never learned how to trust your own voice louder than someone else's. And so that's where this sort of idea, this principle, this strategy comes in. It's not about, just letting those things roll by. It's about building this internal validation for yourself. Not to become some unshaken robot that never listens to anyone, but so that when the pushback does come, and trust me, it will, like, you don't just crumble to it. You pause, you check in with yourself, and then you just keep moving forward. You've got the confidence, you're calm, and you didn't need the permission or the cheering or the crowds or anything to make that happen. Most of us are trained from a very young age that, like, when we look outward, like, we want to look outward for acceptance before we make certain moves. And we were told to wait for approval, for the praise, or for someone else to tell us, like, maybe we're doing it right. But that sort of a habit creates that fragile kind of confidence. It means anytime someone then questions the direction, whether it's your mom or your boss or your best friend, like whoever it may be, you start questioning it too. And that's where growth slows and stalls or shuts down. And so here's how you want to start to shift this. First, like, define what success looks like for you. Not for your parents, not for your coworkers, not what it looks like on Instagram or any other place. Like, you, what does it look like for you? What are the signs that you're on the right path? Is it feeling more aligned with your values? Is it having more energy or more clarity? Is it showing up more honestly in your relationships? Like, whatever it is, write those down, because those are going to become your compass, not someone else's yardstick of where you're headed. And then, build a progression journal where every week you're going to just take some time, take 5 minutes, write down what moved forward for you, what stretched you, what did you try that used to maybe scare you, where did you feel like you won? Like, even if nobody else saw you do it. Like, this starts to create this running record of growth that you can come back to, and when doubt tries to be louder than truth, like, you can come back to it, and it rewires your brain to start to notice these things more and more. Now, the next thing is you develop a self-check-in time. It doesn't have to be fancy. Just set up that time. Maybe it's in the car for a few minutes before work. Like, maybe you're on a quiet walk. Maybe you're sitting down with a notebook or a note app or something. Like, and ask yourself, like, what did I do to be true to where I'm going? Even if nobody else gets that yet. Let your own voice be clear. Let your inner knowing speak up for you. And then, of course, the last piece is we talked about your support circle. You need to diversify the support that you have. Don't put all the emotional eggs you have into one basket. If your entire sense of momentum depends on your partner's approval or manager's praise, that's going to feel shaky, especially if maybe they don't see it eye to eye with you. So build a mix of encouragement. Find some mentors, some friends, books, podcasts, voices that remind you of who you are. When someone else's opinion maybe starts to make you forget that. Without that strong internal validation, the resistance from others, it's going to hit you like a wrecking ball. But if we build up this foundation, when you start to see more and more progress and feel aligned and stay connected with your why, you can face that pushback without falling apart. You stop living for approval and start living for the truth of what it is in that moment for you. And then, of course, our sixth and last principle is transforming your resistance into refinement. When someone pushes back on your growth, it's tempting to either brush it off completely or to let it derail everything you got going on. But there's a different option there. A lot of us miss, and we miss over time, and sometimes we find it, but other times we will miss it. Like using resistance to make your growth stronger or smarter or more sustainable, not by changing direction, but by refining your approach. Think about it this way, not all resistance is garbage. Sometimes it's just wrapped up, clumsy delivery of fear or someone else's discomfort, but underneath, there might be something worth listening to. Maybe it's, showing you where your timing is off, or where your message isn't landing, or where you haven't thought through all the pieces yet. It's not a red light, it's just your chance to maybe recalibrate, without losing the momentum. So what you want to do is you want to focus on how we can change this or look at it without letting it hijack you completely. So start by asking you, is there anything helpful buried in what they're saying? Even if I don't like how they're saying it, strip away the tone or the drama or the delivery, what's left? Is there detail that maybe you missed? Is there a blind spot that you've unintentionally looked past and they've pointed out to you? Let that be a part of carrying you forward and leave the rest completely behind you. And then next, watch for the patterns. If multiple people are flagging the same concern, even if you disagree, it might be time to take a closer look. It doesn't mean that they're right about everything, but it could mean that there's a piece of the plan that needs a little tweaking or changing. It's not failure, that's just, you sharpening your tools as you go. So you shift this, you can, work this like an implementation plan without abandoning your path. Maybe maybe someone I was trying to think of someone, but maybe someone's pushing back on how fast you're moving or how your changes are affecting them emotionally. That doesn't mean that it's wrong in any way. It means that, you need to roll out some needs adjusting, more communication, more clarity, maybe even a slower ramp, that is refined, that, that's you growing with wisdom and changing and refining as you go. And here's one of the sneaky gifts of resistance. Sometimes it exposes things in your relationships that were already there, just under the surface. Maybe it's a new boundary, bringing up, control dynamics. Maybe it's, your success is touching a nerve that someone who's felt, stuck for years, that insight, whatever it is, don't ignore it. Use it as strength. Use it as something that you can, how you can show up both for you and the people who matter more to, the most to you. It's going to keep you from swinging between these extremes, either shutting out all the feedback or craving, every time someone, every time someone, flinches at the change you're making. You learn to mind the resistance and look for the things that you could pull from that. You make your growth more durable, more thoughtful, and more aligned with who you are. Now, as we wrap this up, as we kind of bring it all home as a part of this, if you've been feeling the sting of pushback from any person lately, maybe you've been wondering if you're crazy or for trying to grow while someone else seems confused or critical or quietly uncomfortable. Like, let me just, I want to say this. I hope it connects with you, and I can't say it loud enough. Like, you're not doing it wrong. You're doing things right. The resistance that is being felt is not the stop sign. It's the signal. It means you're shifting something. You're disrupting the patterns. You're changing unspoken agreements that, kept everyone else comfortable, even if it kept you small. Like, growth, it's gonna create ripples. And yeah, sometimes those ripples, they're gonna shake and rock the boat. But that doesn't mean that you have to shrink or shrink to keep the peace around you. It just means that you get to grow with purpose. You get to build the tools you have. You get to do more, have more clarity. And with a response plan where you can actually approach it in that way, it keeps you grounded no matter how others may react to it. Now, these principles that we walked through today, like, they're not just mindset hacks and feel-good quotes. Like, they're real doable strategies that help you stay true to the evolution that you're going through while still holding space for the people around you. And it's not an either or sort of a thing. You can protect your growth and your relationships when you stop seeing resistance as the enemy and start seeing it as part of the process. Now, kind of spanning back a little bit, the bigger picture, like, when you choose to stay that sort of a course, you're not in a pushback defiant way yourself, but in a grounded and presence and value driven intentional way, you give other people permission to do the same. Your courage becomes contagious, and the boundaries that you're setting become a mirror. Your alignment becomes an invitation for them to come and join you. Now, there's a lot we covered today. If this hits home to you, if this resonates with you, then truthfully, you're going to want to go down into the description and you're going to want to grab a copy of the book, The Giver Method. Like I said, it's the best thing you could do to invest in yourself. I'll put the other resources, the free resources, the links to the other places. Go check them out. You can find us in all those places. But I really do think that you should get a copy of the book. It dives deeper into rediscovering your gifts and realigning your life and becoming the kind of person whose growth doesn't just benefit themselves, but it lifts everyone around them. And so you can get it on Amazon. You can go to thegivermethod.com and see a list of other things, ways that we help people and things like that. Now, I'd love to know which of the things we talked about landed for you. Which is the hardest or that you've experienced before? Resistance? Like, maybe what the resistance maybe help you learn to do differently? Drop a comment on what your next move is. And while you're at it, like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. Maybe share this with somebody else who may need it. Thanks for taking the time to hang out with me and listening to this. Just say, keep growing, keep giving from your gifts. Remember that because someone else doesn't quite get it yet, doesn't mean that you're doing anything incorrectly, and it doesn't mean you just slow your growth. Like, you're not falling apart, you're just evolving. And it's just going to take one step at a time, and over time those steps become bolder and bolder. I believe in where you're going. The universe is waiting for you to step into who it is that you're meant to be. And so with that, have a great rest of your day. We'll catch you in our next video.